As you settle in to listen to Cleopatra's story, take a deep breath and let yourself be transported back in time to the enchanting land of ancient Egypt. Imagine a land of golden sands, towering pyramids that kissed the clouds, and a powerful river that flowed like a giant snake. This is Egypt, thousands of years ago. Our story unfolds around the year 100 BC, a time when Egypt, though still a grand and ancient kingdom, was facing challenges from a powerful empire rising in the west, Rome. Chapter 1, Introduction, setting the stage. In the heart of this magnificent land, amidst bustling cities and awe-inspiring temples, lived a young woman named Cleopatra. But Cleopatra wasn't just any woman, she was the daughter of a king, a descendant of a long line of rulers who traced their roots back to a famous conqueror. Cleopatra's royal lineage and family background. Cleopatra belonged to a dynasty called the Ptolemies. This dynasty started hundreds of years ago with a brilliant general named Ptolemy. He wasn't Egyptian, but a Greek soldier who fought alongside the legendary Alexander the Great. When Alexander's vast empire crumbled after his death, Ptolemy, with his sharp mind and military might, claimed Egypt for himself. He became Ptolemy the first king of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Cleopatra was a descendant of Ptolemy the Fern, many generations down the line. Her father, Ptolemy the 12th, wasn't the most popular king. Nicknamed flute player because of his love for music, he wasn't very interested in ruling. This caused a lot of problems in Egypt. Cleopatra also had siblings, caught in a web of power struggles. Royal families back then sometimes married their own brothers and sisters to keep the bloodline pure. This was considered strange by most people, but for the Ptolemies, it was a way to hold on to power. Cleopatra's story is one of ambition, love, and a fight for a crown. But before we dive into her adventures, it's important to understand the grand stage on which she played her part, the ancient land of Egypt and the rising power of Rome that threatened its future. Chapter 2, Early Life and Education. Cleopatra's story begins nestled within the grand halls of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Unlike most children, she wasn't born in a simple house, but within the luxurious palaces of Alexandria, the heart of Egypt. Historians aren't entirely certain about the exact year, but they believe it was around 69 BC that Cleopatra entered the world. Birth and upbringing in the Ptolemaic dynasty. Imagine a life filled with shimmering golden fabrics, exotic fruits on silver platters, and splashing fountains in beautifully landscaped gardens. This was the world Cleopatra knew as a child. Unlike ordinary Egyptian children who helped their families with everyday chores, Cleopatra's days were filled with the finest things. She had a team of servants to cater to her every need, bringing her delicious meals, dressing her in the most beautiful clothes, and arranging for her entertainment. Music filled the air, with talented musicians playing lutes and harps. Games like Senet, a board game similar to checkers, and performances by acrobats and jugglers kept her amused. Some accounts even mention she had exotic pets, like playful monkeys or sleek panthers. But being a princess came with responsibilities too. Unlike many girls of her time, Cleopatra received a remarkable education that would prepare her for a future quite different from most women. Education in languages, philosophy, and diplomacy. Her teachers weren't just any people, but the brightest scholars from Greece, the center of learning in the ancient world. These wise men and women filled Cleopatra's mind with knowledge, teaching her a wide range of subjects, languages. Cleopatra wasn't just expected to speak her native Greek, but also Egyptian, the language of the people she would one day rule. This was quite unusual for royalty back then. Most saw themselves as above the common people and didn't bother learning their language. But Cleopatra's fluency in Egyptian showed not only her intelligence, but also a genuine desire to connect with her subjects. Imagine a young princess confidently speaking the language of her people. It would have been quite impressive. Mathematics and science. These subjects weren't just about numbers and experiments, but about understanding the world around her. Learning about math helped her grasp complex ideas like taxes and trade, while science lessons might have explained the mysterious movements of the stars or the life-giving power of the Nile River. Literature and philosophy, stories of great heroes, and the wise teachings of philosophers like Plato and Aristotle helped shape Cleopatra's mind. They taught her about courage, justice, and the importance of clear thinking. These qualities would be essential for a ruler who would face difficult decisions and navigate the treacherous world of politics. Cleopatra's education wasn't just about sitting in stuffy rooms with dusty scrolls. She likely learned a lot by simply observing the world around her. Imagine her peeking through a doorway and catching a glimpse of her father's court, a place where ambassadors from foreign lands arrived with gifts and hidden agendas. Whispers of deals and plots would have filled the air, and young Cleopatra, a keen observer, would have absorbed these lessons in diplomacy, even if she wasn't directly involved. Some accounts even suggest she received training in the arts, like music and dance. These weren't just seen as ways to pass the time, but as skills that helped a ruler connect with others and project an image of power and grace. Political turmoil in Egypt and the struggle for power within the royal family. However, Cleopatra's childhood wasn't a carefree fairy tale. Her father, Ptolemy, also known as flute player because of his love for music, wasn't the most stable ruler. He was more interested in indulging in his hobbies than in the serious business of governing. This led to unrest in the kingdom. People grew unhappy with the way things were being run, and rebellions started to break out. This political turmoil also cast a long shadow over Cleopatra's family life. As the king's daughter, she was right in the middle of a brewing storm. In those days, keeping power within the family was very important. Sometimes, royalty would even marry their own brothers and sisters. This might seem strange to us today, but back then, it was a way to ensure the bloodline of the rulers stayed pure and that power wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. Cleopatra had siblings, but their relationships weren't always filled with love and laughter. The struggle for power could turn even family members into rivals. As Cleopatra grew older, she would become more and more entangled in these family struggles, and her comfortable life in the palace would be turned upside down. Chapter 3: Rise to Power. A young queen faces a storm. Imagine a young woman, barely a teenager, with eyes full of both fear and determination. This is Cleopatra at 18 years old, suddenly facing a future she never expected: the throne of Egypt. Her father, Ptolemy XII, had breathed his last, leaving behind a kingdom on the brink of chaos. Thrust into the spotlight, a queen too young to rule alone. By the ancient traditions of Egypt, the crown would pass to Cleopatra. But there was a twist. A queen couldn't rule alone. She needed a king by her side, usually a husband or close relative. In this case, the chosen co-ruler was a mere boy, Cleopatra's younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. He was only 12 years old, barely old enough to understand the weight of the golden crown that would one day sit upon his head. On the surface, it might have seemed like a perfect solution, a wise and experienced queen guiding a young king. But beneath the glittering facade lurked a hidden truth. Cleopatra, despite her young age, was a firecracker. Intelligent and ambitious, she burned with a desire to rule in her own right. Ptolemy XIII, on the other hand, was like a lump of clay, easily molded by those around him. Whispering advisors, hungry for power, surrounded him, They saw Cleopatra as a threat, a strong queen who might overshadow their weak king. They filled Ptolemy's ears with doubts about his sister's capabilities, painting her as a power-hungry tyrant. A house divided, threats from within and without. Cleopatra's claim to the throne was like a juicy piece of meat, and everyone wanted a bite. Here's a closer look at the hungry wolves circling the Egyptian palace, the serpent's nest of advisors. Imagine a group of men with sharp tongues and even sharper ambitions. These were the advisors surrounding Ptolemy the 13th, whispering lies and fueling his jealousy of his sister. They craved power, and a strong queen like Cleopatra wasn't part of their plan. They wanted a puppet king, someone they could control, and young Ptolemy was their best bet. Factions with hidden agendas, Egypt wasn't a united kingdom like a perfectly round cake. It was more like a patchwork quilt, sewn together from different regions with their own interests and rivalries. Some of these factions, clinging to old traditions, saw Cleopatra as an outsider, a young woman who didn't understand the true ways of Egypt. They preferred a ruler who followed the old ways, a comfortable shoe that fit their feet just right. The shadow of the eagle, across the vast blue sea, a new empire was spreading its wings, Rome. Powerful Roman generals and politicians were starting to take notice of Egypt, a land overflowing with riches and strategically located at the crossroads of trade routes. A weak and divided Egypt was an easy target for them to swoop in and claim as their own. They might very well try to influence who sat on the Egyptian throne, using their military might to get their way. A queen fights back, Cleopatra's gambit for power. Cleopatra wasn't about to surrender her crown without a fight. Here's how this young queen, with a crown too big for her head but a heart full of courage, tried to overcome the challenges and secure her place on the throne. Winning the hearts of the people, Cleopatra knew that in the end, the love and support of the Egyptian people were the most important things. She wasn't just some foreign princess. She was a descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the rulers of Egypt for hundreds of years. So, she set out to win them over. Imagine her visiting ancient temples, dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like the Nile River in the sun. She spoke the Egyptian language, a language most royalty wouldn't bother with, showing respect for their traditions and their gods and goddesses. This genuine effort to connect with her people resonated with many Egyptians, who saw her as a true leader, not just a spoiled noblewoman. A mind sharper than any sword, Cleopatra wasn't just beautiful, she was a quick learner with a mind as sharp as a desert viper. She devoured knowledge like a hungry lion, studying history, politics, and even military strategy. Surrounded by advisors of her own, she learned the art of diplomacy, the delicate dance of words and negotiations. She outsmarted her opponents by anticipating their moves and using their own weaknesses against them. Playing a delicate game, the situation in Egypt was a tangled web of alliances and rivalries. Imagine Cleopatra navigating this web with the grace of a dancer and the cunning of a fox. She knew she couldn't take on. The Chapter 4. A queen on the run seeks refuge in the arms of Rome. Cleopatra, forced to flee Egypt by the treachery of her brother and his advisors, found herself a lone queen adrift in a stormy sea. Yet, even in exile, her spirit remained unbroken. This chapter explores her dramatic arrival in Rome, her fateful encounter with Julius Caesar, and the complex alliance that would change the course of history. A daring escape and a dramatic arrival. Imagine a young queen, her heart pounding like a drum, disguised as a servant, and bundled into a rug. With the help of a loyal supporter, she snuck out of the palace under the cover of night, leaving behind a kingdom in turmoil. Her journey led her across the vast Mediterranean Sea to Rome, the heart of the rising empire. Rome, however, was not a haven for the weary. It was a city of ruthless ambition and political intrigue, a place where favors were bought and loyalties shifted like desert sands. Cleopatra knew she couldn't simply walk into the city and demand an audience. She needed a champion, someone powerful enough to protect her and influence the political landscape in her favor. Enter Julius Caesar, a brilliant general and politician currently embroiled in a complex power struggle within Rome itself, a meeting of minds and a spark of something more. Cleopatra's arrival in Rome was as dramatic as her escape from Egypt. Imagine a rolled-up rug being unfurled in the grand halls of Caesar's residence, revealing not a pile of expensive fabrics, but a beautiful and determined queen. Caesar, a man accustomed to power and intrigue, was undoubtedly surprised by this bold entrance. Cleopatra, despite her precarious situation, wasn't about to beg for Caesar's help. She was a queen after all, and she possessed a keen intellect and a captivating personality. She presented her case not as a helpless victim, but as a ruler with a legitimate claim to her throne. Caesar, for his part, was impressed by Cleopatra's intelligence and her unwavering determination. He saw in her not just a beautiful woman, but a potential ally in his own political battles. A connection sparked between them, a mix of mutual respect, political calculation, and perhaps even a hint of something more. A pact forged in power and passion. Cleopatra and Caesar struck a deal, a complex alliance built on both political needs and undeniable attraction. Here's a closer look at the tangled threads that bound them together. Cleopatra's return to power. Caesar, with his vast military might, agreed to help Cleopatra reclaim her throne from her conniving brother. In return, Cleopatra would offer Egypt's vast resources and strategic location to bolster Caesar's own position in Rome. It was a win-win situation, at least on the surface. A scandalous love affair. Rumors of a passionate love affair between Cleopatra and Caesar swirled through the streets of Rome. Cleopatra, a foreign queen, and Caesar, a powerful Roman general, their relationship defied tradition and social norms. This scandal fueled the fires of their enemies, who used it to paint Caesar as weak and easily manipulated by a beautiful woman, a pawn in a larger game. While their love may have been real, it's important to remember that both Cleopatra and Caesar were playing a dangerous game. Cleopatra needed Caesar's military muscle to regain her throne. Caesar, on the other hand, saw Cleopatra as a valuable pawn in his own quest for ultimate power in Rome. Their alliance was a dance on a tightrope, with both partners aware that a single misstep could send them crashing down. This alliance between a desperate queen and a ruthless politician would forever alter the destinies of both Egypt and Rome. But the road ahead was fraught with danger. Cleopatra would soon discover that love and power often make uncomfortable bedfellows. The Chapter 5, A Queen's Perilous Path, Love, Loss, and a Looming War. Cleopatra's gamble on Caesar's support had paid off. With his help, she reclaimed the Egyptian throne, pushing her treacherous brother aside. However, their bond, fueled by both passion and political gain, was destined for a tragic end. This chapter explores the fallout from Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra's entanglement with Mark Antony, and the brewing conflict that would engulf the Roman world. Fallen Eagle, Caesar's assassination and Cleopatra's uncertain future. Imagine a bustling marketplace in Rome suddenly falling silent. News has just reached the city. Julius Caesar, the powerful general and Cleopatra's ally, has been assassinated by a group of senators who feared his growing power. Meanwhile, in the distant land of Egypt, Cleopatra, the renowned queen, grappled with the news of Caesar's demise. As a close ally of the fallen leader, she knew that her own future now teetered on the edge of a precipice. With Caesar gone, would she be able to maintain her grip on power and secure the stability of her kingdom? Cleopatra wasted no time in assembling her most trusted advisors to devise a plan of action. Together, they pored over maps and scrolls, strategizing their next moves with meticulous care. The queen knew that she could not afford to appear weak or indecisive in the face of this crisis. Every decision she made would shape the course of history for Egypt and its people. As rumors swirled and rival factions jockeyed for position, Cleopatra remained resolute in her determination to protect her realm. She dispatched emissaries to neighboring kingdoms, seeking alliances and bolstering her defenses against potential threats. At the same time, she worked tirelessly to rally the support of her subjects, ensuring that they remained loyal to her cause in the tumultuous days ahead. Despite the challenges that lay before her, Cleopatra refused to succumb to despair. With steely resolve, she faced each obstacle head-on, drawing strength from the legacy of her ancestors and the unwavering support of her closest companions. Though the road ahead was fraught with peril, Cleopatra remained steadfast in her belief that she could overcome any adversity and emerge victorious. In the end, the story of Julius Caesar's assassination and Cleopatra's uncertain future would become the stuff of legend, immortalized in the annals of history for generations to come. But for now, as the world held its breath and watched events unfold, one thing remained certain: the fate of empires hung in the balance, and the actions of a few would shape the destiny of millions. A new alliance, Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Back in Rome, a new power struggle was brewing. At the center of it all were two of Caesar's closest associates, Mark Antony, a brilliant military commander, and Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, saw an opportunity in this brewing storm. Mark Antony, much like Caesar, was a powerful figure with ambitions for ultimate power. Cleopatra, with her undeniable charm and political acumen, set her sights on forming a new alliance. Their connection was undeniable. Some whispered it was love, a spark ignited by their shared experiences of loss and a yearning for stability in a world teetering on the brink. Others believed it was a calculated alliance, a union fueled by a desire for power and a common enemy in Octavian. Perhaps the truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. A house divided, the threat of war and the challenges of an alliance. Cleopatra and Mark Antony's alliance, though seemingly strong, faced significant challenges such as the rise of Octavian. Octavian, young and ambitious, wasn't about to share power with anyone, especially not a charming foreigner like Cleopatra. He used public outrage over Cleopatra's influence on Antony to rally support for himself, painting her as a seductive manipulator who threatened the very foundations of the Roman Republic. A fragile union. Cleopatra and Antony's bond, despite its intensity, wasn't built on the sturdiest foundation. Their decisions were often clouded by personal desires, leading to strategic blunders that Octavian skillfully exploited. A divided empire. The Roman world wasn't a united entity. Many regions, weary of constant power struggles, were hesitant to throw their weight behind either side. Cleopatra and Antony needed to win over these neutral factions if they hoped to prevail against Octavian's growing influence. As tensions escalated, the once mighty Roman world teetered on the edge of war. Cleopatra, caught between love, ambition, and the fate of her kingdom, would find herself playing a pivotal role in the battles to come. The decisions she made, fueled by both passion and reason, would shape the course of history. Chapter 6, Final Years and Legacy. A queen's fall and a legend's rise, Cleopatra's daring gamble on alliances had brought her a taste of victory. Yet, the Roman world remained a viper's nest of political intrigue, and her future, once again, hung in the balance. This chapter explores the rise of Octavian, the crushing defeat of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, and the enduring legacy of this extraordinary queen. The tide turns, Octavian's ruthless rise to power. Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, was a young man with a steely glint in his eyes and an unyielding ambition. He wasn't about to share power with anyone, especially not a captivating foreign queen like Cleopatra. He used the simmering public anger over Cleopatra's influence on Mark Antony to his advantage. Through clever propaganda, he painted her as a seductive manipulator who threatened the very core of the Roman Republic. This smear campaign resonated with many Romans, who viewed Cleopatra with suspicion as an outsider with designs on their empire. Octavian, capitalizing on these sentiments, rallied support behind himself, positioning himself as the defender of Rome's traditions and values against a seductive foreign power. Cleopatra and Mark Antony, on the other hand, made crucial mistakes. Blinded by their personal desires, they often made rash decisions that exposed their weaknesses. Octavian, a shrewd strategist, exploited these blunders, maneuvering them into a final, decisive battle. A love story, cut short, Cleopatra's choice and tragic end. The epic clash between the two sides took place at Actium, a naval battle that would decide the fate of the Roman world. Cleopatra, against the advice of her own commanders, joined the fight with her fleet. However, the battle was a disaster for Cleopatra and Antony. Miscommunication, strategic errors, and Octavian's superior military might lead to their crushing defeat. Fleeing the battlefield, Cleopatra and Antony returned to Egypt, their dreams of glory shattered. Antony, heartbroken and defeated, saw no future for himself. He took his own life, a tragic end for a once great warrior. Cleopatra, though devastated, wasn't ready to surrender. She attempted to negotiate with Octavian, perhaps hoping to save her son, Caesarion. However, Octavian's terms were harsh. He demanded complete surrender and planned to parade Cleopatra through the streets of Rome as a symbol of his victory. Facing humiliation and the likely separation from her children, Cleopatra made a fateful choice. According to legend, she took her own life, ending her reign on her own terms. The exact method of her suicide remains a mystery, but it marked the end of an era for Egypt, a legacy etched in stone. Cleopatra, from powerful queen to cultural icon. Cleopatra's story is more than just a tragic love affair or a tale of political defeat. She was a brilliant ruler, a skilled diplomat, and a woman who defied expectations. Her legacy continues to resonate throughout history. A powerful ruler. Cleopatra's reign, though ultimately cut short, was a time of relative peace and prosperity for Egypt. She revived ancient traditions, boosted trade, and protected her people's interests. A woman of many facets. Cleopatra wasn't just a beautiful queen. She was a scholar, a linguist, and a shrewd negotiator. Her intelligence and political acumen are undeniable. A timeless icon. Cleopatra's story has captivated artists, writers, and playwrights for centuries. She is a symbol of power, love, and defiance, a complex and fascinating figure who continues to inspire and intrigue. Even though Egypt fell under Roman rule, Cleopatra's legacy endured. Her story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of ambition and the fleeting nature of power. Yet it also served as a testament to the enduring strength of a woman who dared to challenge the status quo and fight for her place in a world dominated by men. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, may have met a tragic end, but her name continues to echo through the halls of history, a reminder of a queen who dared to dream and fight for her crown.